Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Kanjan. I'm the member of provincial parliament for the Barrie Innisfil area. We have a proud Jewish population of about 700 plus people and growing proudly. I wanted to wish everyone a happy Jewish Heritage Month. I know it's a very solemn one, for my family. I know many others who are affected by family members who may live in Israel or have loved ones there. But rest assured, many governments are coming together with their efforts, such as our own minister and MPP, Lisa MacLeod, who is hosting us today. Before I quickly introduce her, I want to just mention how much of an inspiration she has been to me. I grew up as a young Tory going to University of Ottawa, and she's been your MPP for 15 years. And I remember when I first saw her, and she was just such an iron lady, and I said, I have to meet her. So I was one of those, paparazzi people, young Tories trying to get photos with her everywhere she went. And now here we are as colleagues. So I do want to pass it over to MPP and Minister Lisa MacLeod.
Thank you very much, Andrea, and I'm very proud of you. You worked on my first campaign 15 years ago when it was then Nepean Carleton. You went door to door with me as a young student, and here you are now. You're the deputy House leader. You are the parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Parks and Conservation and Environment. And I think, as we celebrate Jewish Heritage Month, I think the Jewish people across Ontario should be very proud that they have a very strong voice in you and somebody who celebrates your heritage each and every day. Just wanted to introduce a couple of other people that are joining us today. Member of Provincial Parliament for Ottawa West Nepean, our good friend Jeremy Roberts. He'll be saying a few words. And many of you know I have my own rabbi. Rabbi Bloom is here tonight. And he and I have been working together for many, many years at the Ottawa Tourist Center. And I have some, later on in the agenda, some funny stories that he's aware of course. And then, of course, is my really good friend, Andrea Friedman from the JCC and the Federation. And she's done incredible work in our city, standing up against anti-Semitism. Whenever it exists, she lets me know and we get to work together. And so I'm really eternally grateful for her today. As Andrea said, this past spring, I celebrated 15 years as the member of provincial parliament for Nepean and the former riding of Nepean Carleton. And throughout that entire time, I have built a strong bond with the Jewish community in our riding, but across the city of Ottawa. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say at the outset, I'm sending my best wishes to Rabbi Bulka, who has been an inspiration and a friend and a mentor to me over many years. And I know he's fallen ill, but I think of him daily, and I think about all of the wonderful things he has stood for, and that has been a big model for my life. And in terms of making sure that regardless of where we come from or what race, religion, or creed or ethnicity we have, that we really should work together. And as Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture Industries, I often say that Ontario is the world in one province. We should be very proud of that. We should be very proud of the fact that we can come from anywhere in the world and live together in harmony and really allow us to experience one another's religious traditions, cultural traditions. And I can say, just as I celebrate Christmas, and Rabbi Bloom knows I often will celebrate Hanukkah with him. One of the things that we did this year in my office, and if you saw the names on the screen, you would recognize that that we have Hindus on my staff. We have people of Jewish faith. We have Christians. We have Muslims, and we have those who are raised in the Chinese tradition. And we celebrated this year everybody's traditions, because we felt it was necessary for us to learn about each other. You can't be the world in one province and then exclude people, and so that's really important. But today is not only just about Jewish Heritage Month. I wanted to add my voice and my disgust at the rampant anti-racism that has been occurring over the last number of weeks. And as many of you know, myself and Rabbi Bloom in the past have had a Day of Humanity and Spirituality to talk about how we should come together. And this has been consistent in my career in standing up for religious minorities, but also just for good people who do good things and who should never, ever, ever have to go to their religious place of worship and have security systems and alarm systems and police presence. And that is one of the things I learned early on when I was first elected, that the Jewish peoples in my community had to deal with. So I want to reiterate my pride in our diversity, our pride in our culture, religion, ethnicity, while at the same time celebrating our shared heritage as Ontarians. And I can say, as the minister responsible for heritage, we're proud that for over 100 years, there have been 200, and for the Jewish population has been growing here. And my staff pointed out a few people to me, but they forgot one that I'm gonna have to end on it in a second. But you know, Dorothy Dworkin, who was a nurse and a founder of Toronto's Mount Sinai Hospital, Schitt's Creek star Eugene Levy, Stars Trek's William Shatner, and Andrea Friedman's not gonna be happy about this, because I think the big debate tonight is going to be about the Leafs and the Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens between the two Andreas. And so we'll keep that mind of time to get you off at 7:15. But Toronto Maple Leafs player Zach Hyman. But the one person I want to talk about a little bit, and I wrote an op-ed around Remembrance Day this past year as Minister of Heritage. And a lot of people aren't aware of Lillian Freeman, whose home, where she grew up on Somerset Street, is now the home of the Army Officers' Mess. And she became the first person in Canada to produce in World War II the poppy. Think about that. The atrocities that happened in World War II to her people, and this is what she did. She created these poppies. And I think that is a tremendous part of Jewish Heritage Month. It's also a tremendous part of Canadian history. And so that's why we're here today, is to celebrate that Jewish heritage, but also to stand up against anti-Semitism. And I want to say, I had the opportunity to go to Israel with David Cooper, who is a good friend of mine. And when I was there, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in the Q&A, but one of the most touching things I've ever done in my life was go to Yad Vashem. And to see the slippers under the glass really brings home the atrocities of World War II and what can happen if anti-Semitism is allowed to prevail. And I want to root that out. I think we need to stand up and speak strongly about it. And having spoken with David and Andrea the last couple of days, they have been very clear that the rise in anti-Semitism is real. And so I want you to know I continue to stand by you. And if you need me to stand in front of you, I'll do that too. So with that, I just wanted to recognize my dear friend, Rabbi Bloom, who will be speaking later, Andrea Friedman, the president and CEO of the Jewish Federation of Ottawa and the JCC. I know David Cooper is on the line, who's vice president of CEJA, and who remains a great friend and a sounding board to me. And of course, we both have the two parliamentary assistants, Andrea Kanjan of the Jewish Faith, and a strong voice in the legislature. And of course, MPP Jeremy Roberts, who I'd like to introduce. So had a recent conversation with the Premier, and I'm in the meeting with Jeremy Roberts. And Jeremy was so vocal in his support of the Jewish community during that meeting, and really defending the work that Tamir does and getting more investments in that. And he was wearing his entire heart for the community in that meeting. And I was very, very proud of him. I texted him right after that meeting to say what a good job he done, how well he articulated his support for Tamir, and I reiterated mine as well. And I really wanted him to be part of tonight, because although I represent Nepean, he represents Ottawa West Nepean. Really, when it comes down to Nepean, it's all Nepean. And we, between the two of us, have a number of synagogues and a large Jewish population. So I wanted him to be part of this tonight. So Jeremy, thank you for your strong voice and leadership. And I'd like to now pass it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mr. McLeod, for inviting me to be here today. It's really wonderful to join all of you to celebrate Jewish Heritage Month. And, I was thinking back, Lisa, and the first political event I ever went to as a candidate was the Day of Humanity and Inclusion that you held. And that was the first time I ever went out to a community event, and you took me around and introduced me to folks. We had Rabbi Bulka there with us that particular day, and what a wonderful event. And Lisa, you've been such a strong supporter of the Ottawa community as a whole, but particularly of the Jewish community. And I'm glad I can join your voice at Queen's Park to represent that community as well. Also, of course, really thrilled to be here today with my friend Andrea Kanjan. And Andrea, a lot of folks don't know this, but Andrea and I actually used to work together for a great Jewish member of parliament and minister. We both worked for Joe Oliver when he was Canada's Minister of Finance. And Andrea, shortly after I left politics from federal politics, working as a staffer, I was over in England studying, and Andrea came over to visit, and we were walking around, and Andrea said, Jeremy, what do you plan to do when you get back to Canada? And I said, well, I'm thinking of running for provincial politics. And she said, well, funnily enough, so am I. And here we are almost 4 years later as co-MPPs in the legislature, and truly wonderful to be able to share this journey with her. And she is such a fierce voice in the legislature and has been doing just a phenomenal job. So Andrea, great to be with you here today. And of course, great to see Rabbi Bloom and Andrea Friedman as well. I want to start, of course, on a solemn note by saying how sorry I am for all the horrific violence against Israelis over the past number of weeks. It's been truly terrible to witness, and I know I speak for all of us on this call in saying that we stand with you, and we're here to add our voice in whatever way we can. I actually shortly after the violence began, my staff added onto my Twitter name the Israeli flag. And I had a constituent who emailed in and said, MPP Roberts, I'm disgusted that you would do this. This does not reflect the views of the majority of your constituents. Please take the Israeli flag down. And I replied back, and in so many words said, with all due respect, my riding has the largest Jewish population between Montreal and Toronto, and I will always stand with the people of the Jewish faith and with Israel in combating the anti-Semitism that we're seeing perpetrated by Hamas and also by, unfortunately, some folks here in Ontario as well, and going to continue to be steadfast in that support. And so whatever I can do, I know that Lisa, Andrea, and I are all here ready to stand with you. Flipping to a bit more of a positive note, Lisa kind of pre-staged this a little bit, but one of my biggest commitments that I want to see done before the next election, if possible, is trying to realize this dream of Tamir's community center that they've been working on for a number of years, and that so many in the Jewish community are involved with. This is a project really close to my heart. As many of you know, I have a younger brother who has special needs, and so supporting all of our group homes for individuals with developmental disabilities is so important. But I think Tamir, when we think about Jewish Heritage Month, is such a great representation of the Jewish community as a whole, their compassion and community spirit, and how Tamir has been there as an organization, like Rena has been down in Toronto as well, supporting folks and building that inclusive community, and goes back to that theme of Lisa's Day of Humanity and Inclusion that we've celebrated in the Nepean riding. And so I'm going to continue to push for this. This is a top priority for me. Want to make sure that we can see that project realized. And I look forward to the day, hopefully very soon, where we can all gather in person and celebrate the opening of a community center with Tamir. So we'll keep pushing forward on that. And in the meantime, if there's anything that my office can do to support any of you, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help, and as we get through Jewish Heritage Month, we've also got some good news in terms of our vaccination rates that continue to climb and meet new highs, and so some light at the end of the pandemic tunnel as well. So thank you so much again, Lisa, for inviting me this evening. Andrea, thanks again for moderating, and I'll turn things back over to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Jeremy. And much of what you said reminds me of the great saying and value of Tekim Olam, of really trying to fix the world and really work together on it. On that note, I do want to pass it on to our next two guest speakers as well before we get to questions. Next will be Rabbi Bloom from the Ottawa Torah Center Chabad. As we know, one of the many values is lifelong learning in Judaism, and something my grandma taught me, being from the Soviet Union, is possessions come and go, but knowledge is forever. And Rabbi Bloom really built on that foundation. Back in 1997, as many of you may know, him and his wife Dina founded the Ottawa Tourism Center Chabad, a non-for-profit organization dedicated to providing Jewish social and educational programming in, of course, the nation's capital. And over the past 20 years, they've evolved into really many successes. Of course, outreach is part of their organization. And then the big event of 2014, of course, was when they constructed the synagogue, much needed in the Barhaven section of Ottawa. So thank you, Rabbi Bloom, for your massive impact. And I'll pass it on to you for your remarks.
Thank you. Minister McLeod, it's good to be here. We know that you're always here to support the community and for your support of Israel. MPP Kanjan, MPP Roberts, and my dear colleague Andrea Friedman, dear friends. I'd like to share 2 points during my remarks this evening. The first one is a personal one, and the second one as a rabbi. A personal one, for those of you who know, I was born in Paris, France. And anti-Semitism was very much front and center growing up as a child. Many of my childhood friends have moved from France, some of them actually to Canada, to come to a safer haven, a country that really cherishes diversity and cherishes different cultures. And I could tell you, for me as a rabbi, the last 2 weeks, fielding calls of congregants and members of our community, expressing their concerns, expressing the fear of going out with the kippah or going out with the Star of David. For me, as a French-born, Jewish child, it brought back some terrible memories. And so I think the gathering tonight is so important, that we gather, and we do thank the members of our provincial parliament who are here on the call tonight, and our minister McLeod for really standing up. But I think it's so crucial because I've experienced it as a child growing up in Europe, this is, like Minister McLeod said before, this is the beauty of our province. It's the world in one province, and this is really the values that we cherish, and even personally, the friendships that I've made from people of many different cultures. And so I really commend you for putting together this evening. It's a very important cause to make sure that some of the events, some of the hate and the acts that were committed in the last 2 weeks, in Toronto, Montreal. We have to make sure that this is something that doesn't happen in our beautiful province and in a beautiful country, which has the great value of multiculturalism. And so I thank you for organizing this tonight. Very important cause that is very timely. And Jewish Heritage Month, that's the right way, that's the right time to do it. The Jewish community contributes to this great province and great country, but every other culture contributes as well. And this is what makes it beautiful. And really, this is the value that that we have to stand up for. And so thank you.
Well, thank you, Rabbi. And before I pass it on to Andrea Freeman, just want to open it up to if you do have questions, you can use the Q&A application on the Zoom chat, on Zoom, that is on the bottom right corner. You can type in your questions there, because later on in the evening today, we'll get to some Q's and A's. We have about 100 people on the call today, so we may not get to all of them, but we will try. So on that note, I do want to introduce our next speaker, Andrea Freeman. Many of you know her, President and CEO of the Jewish Federation of Ottawa. And for many of you that do know her, will know that in her 20-year career, she's worked in the non-for-profit sector in many different movements, primarily the Jewish Federation movement. But prior to joining the Jewish Federation of Ottawa, she and the Ottawa Jewish Community Foundation, as president and CEO in 2013. She also served as the VP and of the philanthropy and operations at the Mount Sinai Hospital Foundation in Toronto, overseeing their operations and annual fundraising. So many accomplishments, many accolades. Really thrilled to have you. So Andrea, over to you for some remarks.
Thank you very much, MPP Kanjan. I appreciate that kind introduction. And thank you, Minister MacLeod and MPP Roberts, for organizing, for being here and participating in this program, along with Rabbi Bloom and myself. Andrea, Lisa, and Jeremy are all great friends of Ontario's Jewish community. They always stand up for Israel and against hate. And really for that, we are truly, truly grateful. We're also grateful for the government's security funding and all the government's efforts to combat anti-Semitism. I would have really liked to deliver remarks tonight about the myriad of contributions that Jewish Canadians have made to our city, to our province, and to our country. But instead, I'm compelled to speak about anti-Semitism. I first went to Israel as a 14-year-old on a family trip to explore my Jewish roots, and have since been back over 20 times. Wherever Jews live in the world, we pray in the direction of Jerusalem. In one of the Psalms, as part of our liturgy, we recite, "If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither, let my tongue stick to my palate, if I do not remember you." And every year, to conclude the Passover Seder, Jews worldwide recite the same words, "Next year in Jerusalem." All of this to say, and so much more, is simply that the Jewish state of Israel is a central aspect of my Jewish identity, the 15,000 Jews who reside in Ottawa, and the 250,000 who reside in Ontario. And yet what we've seen these past few weeks is that Jews have been asked to check this core aspect of our identity at the door in order to participate fully in Canadian society. We're being denied a basic right that our neighbors all enjoy, the right to live our true, full, and authentic selves without fear of intimidation, without fear of violence or harassment. This is anti-Semitism, and it must be called out unequivocally, forcefully, and each and every time. Dissimilar from every other group in Ontario and Canada, Jews are being denied the right to define what is and what is not anti-Semitism. Every other at-risk community is afforded this right, but the Jews. I call anti-Semitism. Here are two examples of anti-Semitism as defined by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, which has been adopted by both Canada and Ontario. Thank you all. The first is this: denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, for example, by claiming that the existence of the state of Israel is a racist endeavor. Over 70% of UN resolutions call out Israel. There are 56 Islamic countries, 100 Christian majority countries, and one Jewish nation consistently being unfairly singled out. I call anti-Semitism. Example number two, drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. Community members have shared dozens and dozens of such posts on social media just this past week alone. A pro-Palestinian rally right here in our nation's capital had a sign with a swastika on it. I call anti-Semitism. There have been death threats made against Jewish Canadians for publicly standing up for Israel's right to defend herself. Once again, I call anti-Semitism. And that's why tonight's town hall is so important. Just as Lisa and Andrea and Jeremy are doing and consistently do, we must not only celebrate Jewish contributions to the province, but we must not allow anti-Semitism to find fertile ground in Ontario and in Canada. And this is why Jewish organizations across the country have called on the government of Canada to convene an emergency summit on anti-Semitism. The idea is to bring together federal, provincial, and municipal officials to lead a holistic approach to combating insidious Jew hatred. We know that Lisa and Jeremy and Andrea and many of their colleagues are strong allies, and we call on the government of Canada to give them more tools in this fight. We need to make sure that children are not afraid to go to school, that university campuses are safe places for all students. We need to make sure that adults are not made to take a loyalty test or asked to check a piece of our identity at the door. Let me conclude with one final thought. The fight against anti-Semitism is a fight for the type of province and country we want to live in. We know from past experience that what starts with the Jews does not end with the Jews. It is a litmus test for what a society will and will not tolerate in terms of hatred and bigotry. This fight will not be easy, but it is of critical importance. And that's why I'm so grateful to have allies like Andrea, like Jeremy, and like Lisa. Thank you all very much.
Well, thank you, Andrea, for those strong remarks, and I think that bridges quite well to just the next segment before we get to Q&A. And again, if you have questions, I see a few people submitted them. Just use the Q&A tab below. But in the interim, just wanted to go over a quick slide show on some of the things the government has done to combat anti-Semitism and the supports for the Jewish community. I know, Andrew Freeman, you mentioned in your remarks, being safe on campus. I remember as a Jewish student at University of Ottawa, Israeli Apartheid Week was not a great time on campus, and just really trying to rally with lots of people. And I found a lot of individuals on campus that weren't Jewish that became really strong allies, and that was very helpful. But we need to look to our governments as to what they're doing as well. So on this slide, you'll see, and many of you may be familiar, but of course, there was the Anti-Racism Directorate, which Minister MacLeod does a lot of work with. And not only do they work on policies to eliminate any inequalities and racism and anti-Semitism, but that's the same directorate that came out with that $1.6 million fund over 2 years for the anti-hate grant program, which I know many groups have applied to. And that was on top of that $1.7 million for the Safe and Vital Communities grant to combat hate-motivated crimes. So that, we recognize certainly was important. No one wants to have security guards and cameras at their place of worship and their shul. Unfortunately, that is some of the reality we face at the present moment, which is why we do need to continue to stamp out anti-Semitism. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that some of the other measures we've also taken is, of course, funding for faith-based and cultural organizations. In the last budget 2021, there is $50 million set aside for faith-based cultural organizations to help them recover from COVID-19. Really important to be able to help with that. On the next slide, you'll also see strong actions in terms of additional measures to combat anti-Semitism. We talked about the IRA definition being implemented in Ottawa, but so important to implement it in Ontario legislation, especially when it's the level of government responsible for police forces, et cetera. They're so vital on that. So that did successfully pass, despite emails that members might have been receiving and some of the pushback there. But our caucus and our government was very adamant to push right back and to call anti-Semitism for what it was, and of course encourage our local municipal councils to also adopt the IRA definition. Most recently, there was a motion. It was done by Robin Martin, MPP for Eglinton Lawrence, who also helped with the Combating Anti-Semitism Act with MPP Woboma. But she introduced a motion to help us build a Holocaust memorial on the grounds of the Legislative Assembly by 2025. Many of you know the Holocaust Memorial. It took many years in Ottawa to build. But this will obviously add to that, and so recognize Ontario's history and be a beacon of hope for people, but also reflection on the atrocities that we cannot let happen ever again. So just want to reflect on some of those quick points before we move on to some Q's and A's. One question I do have that was pre-submitted to you, Minister McLeod, was, you talked about your first trip to Israel, but, just to lighten the little things about a little bit, can you reflect or tell us about, your first either event you went to with the local Jewish community, or your favorite Jewish community event you've been to?
Okay, so first of all, I did send around in the chat box my op-ed that I wrote with CJA when I went, and it was published on October the 1st, 2014, and it still stands. And I want to read at the end of this. Because I think it's important. I do talk about my experience at Yad Vashem. I did talk about how Canada and Israel both came of age at the same time, and I also wrote about meeting Ehud Barak. And while we were in a very small group of people with the then Foreign Affairs Minister, Defense Minister, I can't remember which Peter MacKay was at the time, there were about 12 of us in the room. And Ehud Barak stands up with his glass of wine, and he said, and I wrote in this, Canada and Israel are the second largest country in the world. That's how close we were. And I just thought that was always so funny, because of course Canada's already the second largest, but you really understand when you go to Israel how small she is. But I do talk about my time at Yad Vashem, some of the most moving parts, but I want to leave it with this, because I still believe this. Israel is a beautiful country, a contrast of antiquity and modernity. A state galvanized by religion, but at the same time secular and driven by democratic values in a region where democracy is in short supply. And I go on just to sort of conclude by my visit taught me as much about myself and Canada as it did about Israel and its people. And it was really remarkable to be there. Now, if I would not know where my first Jewish event would be, but I can tell you, and Rabbi Bloom will laugh at this. So Victoria, because I was elected when she was just turning a year old, I would make it a point to take her to other religious organizations and churches and synagogues, mosques, temples, gurdwaras, so that she would experience everything. And because Hanukkah and Christmas are so close together, we would always start the Christmas season by going to Rabbi Bloom's Hanukkah events. And so by the time she was about 5 years old, Victoria thought she was both Jewish and Christian. She thought it was just like one long event. And so, and Rabbi Bloom is laughing because, first of all, the one time, she's just a little squirt. She's probably, maybe 4 years old. I can't remember. And we did the Hanukkah event on a Sunday night. And the next morning, Joe and Victoria were driving me to the airport because I had to fly out on the Monday morning for Queen's Park. And the whole way to the airport, she was kicking the back of my chair and demanding that we go to see Rabbi Bloom, because he promised her the night before that she was going to get some gelt. And remember that? and dreidels. And we said, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. Rabbi Bloom won't be up right now. And so she hounded her dad until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon to go to my office. And thankfully, Rabbi Bloom had the dreidel and the gelt there for her. And she looked at her father and she said, that Rabbi Bloom is a good man. And then the other time, she was a little bit older, and the Torah Center was finally completed. And the children in the day school, remember this, everyone was singing, and they were singing in Hebrew. And so she just got up there and started singing, except she didn't know any of the words and didn't know any of the tune. And so Rabbi Bloom had to tell her that, Victoria, maybe you can just come down here, and I think he gave her a donut and she was happy. But that's one of those are a couple of my favorite ones. Obviously, the kosher barbecue that the Rabbi Bloom and I got to do in this past summer was really fun. And he's a great barbecuer, by the way. So we got to keep making sure he does that again when it's safe to do so. And then I'll just finally say on this, so mitzvah day is always a good day for me. Andrea Freeman knows this, and I love it. So, and I'm hyper competitive. I'm minister of sport after all. And I think it was 2 years ago on mitzvah day. I want to say it was 2019. And I'm going to say this wrong, challah. I was making the challah Okay, all right, good. And I was so competitive and I won the competition and I was so excited. But Mitzvah Day was certainly a great day for me. So I lots of great times with the Jewish community, and some of my greatest friends come from the community, and that's why it's really important for me to make sure that I stand up and speak out against hate when it happens.
Right. And one thing that does unite us over holidays, or what it might be, is of course food as well. I know hummus is on both sides, and we think about when we think about conflicts. But Minister, you talked about suganyat, jelly donuts, challah, and latkes we have at Hanukkah as well. But have you landed on your favorite Jewish food?
Well, I had the benefit of going to Israel and eating there for a week. And so it was incredible. The first night we arrived in Israel from Ben Gurion Airport, we went to a wine festival. And so really got to experience that. But also the food was just incredible. In fact, when I came back in 2014, I basically refused to eat anything but Middle Eastern food when I came back. It was just so good. It was just, I was consistently doing it. But there is some pretty good restaurants in Toronto. So one of my best friends is Ivan Diamond, who is many of you probably know Ivan, and he's a radiologist. We went to Israel together, and so he and our friend Sean are always trying to find different kosher restaurants to take me to in Toronto, and there's some really great spots, and there's really good, great gourmet food. So I don't know, I wouldn't want to say just one, but I've had some great brisket. I've had some great chicken at Landwehr, and obviously, just the shawarma is everything. Like it's delicious.
There's a lot to choose from for sure.
Yeah.
Just going to switch gears a bit. We do have some audience questions. I believe this one would be better directed to Rabbi Bloom or Andrew Friedman, but this is a person who is a retired member of the PSAC, and they want to know what can they do and what the community can do to challenge the inappropriate questions that are really out there right now.
So I'll take the first crack at it, and then perhaps Rabbi Bloom could add. Look, the position taken by PSAC is very disturbing. Unions should focus on advocating for the rights of their members in terms of working conditions and the like, and leave politics out of it. There is some private Facebook groups that have been set up for PSAC members who are appalled by what's going on, and I would encourage you to reach out to me after the meeting, and I'll get you set up with the people who are working to fight this. But that's far outside their mandate, and it's offensive to many of their members.
Rabbi, did you want to build on what PSAC members can do?
No, I agree. I mean, I think that every single one of us has to contribute to this conversation and speak out. And being in touch with the Jewish Federation, with Andrea, and with CJ could really direct people to let them know where they could get involved. And it is most important for everyone to stand up. Thank
you. And just another question we have here is, and Minister, maybe you could start with the answer here. But what about public figures? What should they do when they're faced with racism, and what can we do to combat anti-Semitism, especially in our schools and education system?
Yeah, and I did see that there's a question there with respect to John McCrae Secondary School. So please call my office. I'm going to read out the number. Either Matt, Trish, or Larry or Pablo will help out. So it's 613-823-2116. Again, 823-2116. Andrea knows Friedman her and I have for years been working together. When we see this crop up in our schools, we go right in and we start and we act immediately. So please let us know that. You have a significant ally in the education system with Minister Lecce, who's been a very strong voice in supporting and advocating for the Jewish community. So I think that's important. And I think, whatever, regardless of what type of hate it is out there, if it's anti-Indigenous, as occurred yesterday in the National Hockey League, or if it's anti-Black racism, which we've seen in spades, particularly south of the border, but we're not immune here, or anti-racism in terms of anti-Semitism. We all have a role to play in Ontario to stand up for those who are being abused. We cannot look the other way. And I said this in speech last week with respect to human trafficking. It's really easy for people to turn and look the other way when there's an uncomfortable debate happening. But it's jobs of leaders to sit there and have these heavy conversations and to stand up, particularly when you're an ally to a certain community. You can't look the other way. You have to make an example out of what's happening. You have to take a stand. And listen, that's not to say, like, I'm the Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture Industries, and I started out saying this, we're the world of one province. I don't want to take sides in a war. I want people, when they come to Ontario, to feel comfortable and safe. And I want people, when they come to Ontario to visit, know that they can see themselves in our population. And I want to make sure that people, when they come to Ontario, feel secure in that reason. You know, I'm working on FIFA, trying to land the World Cup in 2026, okay? And one of the greatest things that I have heard from the conversations that we're having is they really want to land in Toronto. Why? Because people from around the world see themselves in our population. It's like the Raptors nation. When you look at the pictures after the Raptors won, you know, it looked incredible. That's what I aspire to do. And that's why in my ministry, we're responsible for the $50 million cultural and religious funding that came out of the budget. Myself and the finance minister met earlier today just to look at how the parameters are going to be. That's incredibly important to me. It was important to me when I was in opposition as the anti-racism critic to ensure that anti-Semitism was included in the wording during that time. And Andrea was part of that debate with me, as was David Cooper, and we were successful. And when you look at the Holocaust Museum Memorial that is slated for Queen's Park, that's this ministry, the ministry that I represent as well. We just completed the Afghan Memorial. So these are all areas that I think that we need to be vocal on, and we all have a role to play. I'm gonna send it over to Jeremy too, just to see what his thoughts are on this.
Sure, appreciate that, Lisa. And you know, you hit all the points, but perhaps I'll just provide one illustrative example. Andrea, I think the last time you and I were on a call, my friend Helen Zipes had connected us because there was an instance where a child who attends Nepean High School had been shown a video in class that was very anti-Semitic, and so Helen channeled that through to my office. And as Minister MacLeod mentioned, we have a really strong ally of the Jewish community in Minister Lecce. He is a very, very fierce defender of Israel. And I texted Minister Lecce that evening to let him know that this was happening. And within 24 hours, he had already had his officials reach out to the school. They had made sure that that video was destroyed from the curriculum, that the teacher was, told that this video should not be used again, that there was a plan starting to be developed to talk to the kids about what they had seen. You know, we want to make sure that we're acting on these things very quickly. And so, for all of you on this call, if your kids ever do see something or are shown something in school that they're not comfortable with, make sure to reach out to your local MPP, whether it's me or Lisa or any of our team here in Ottawa, and we'll make sure that we raise it right away, because the education system, we need to make sure that that's a safe place for all of our students.
If I could just add a comment about John McCrae, because I know personally that some of the Jewish kids have really experienced are having a hard time, and I am in touch with Erin O'Grady, the principal there. So we're trying to see what we could do about it. So Minister MacLeod, you know that you could call on me if there is any community effort, which I think should be made to ensure that the Jewish students in that school and in others feel safe and don't feel picked on or bullied and so on.
Yeah, and I imagine John McCrae and SRB would be the two schools in the riding that would highest incidence. Would you expect that?
Yeah, I mean, John McRae, I'm aware of a few instances in the last 2 weeks, so.
Okay, well, we'll keep in touch on that,
Yeah.
and I'll make that commitment to you.
As well as LGH, but yeah.
Okay, LGH, right.
Yeah.
All right, we do have to close. I bet we can keep talking for hours, but I'm going to pass it over to Minister McLeod for some closing remarks. And just for those questions that have been submitted, they will be answered offline as well.
Yeah, listen, Andrea Kanjan, parliamentary assistant to the Stars, you're doing a great job. I know I speak on behalf of everybody here to say how proud we are of you. Jeremy, I want to reiterate the same. I know you've been a real vocal asset to our city and to the Jewish community in your riding, so thank you for that. And of course, to Andrea and to Rabbi Bloom, I want to say thank you for your continued friendship, your advice, for your always welcoming me and including me, and always making sure that I'm aware of what's happening in the riding in the community. I will end with this, just more lighthearted, because we've talked about some heavy topics today. One of the things I didn't write in that op-ed when I went to Israel is I really fell in love with the term Shabbat Shalom. And so when I was getting on the airplane after our 7 days in Israel, and I'm just like all whimsical, thinking I'm by myself, and I'm singing a little song called Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. And apparently the man and his wife in front of me, as we were boarding the plane, could hear me having this little sing along with myself. And they turned and they said, do you know what that means? And I said, yes, I do, but I love to say it. I mean, it wasn't a Friday. I think we were leaving on a Sunday, and I'm just like having this time because I love the words so much. So with that, shalom, everyone, and please stay safe, both from COVID-19 and from the hate that is out there, and know that you have allies, and we're there to work with you and to protect you. So thank you all very much.
Everyone.